Okay. Welcome to our webinar, The S in ESG, Why Social Value Matters. I'm Sam Candy, CEO of Responsible Futures. We are delighted to be here today to discuss the importance of social value and how it can benefit all. I'd like to thank our partners in this webinar, Action Funder, an organisation that enables businesses to fund community action and celebrate the impact. In a world where boardrooms are full of chat about ESG, Action Funder makes it easy to walk the talk on social responsibility. Businesses use Action Funder's tech platform to identify and work with local communities best placed to create real change, and do it fast because the world won't wait. Social value has the potential to release millions of pounds for community benefit. It encourages smarter spending to not only deliver a proposed service, but also address social, economic and environmental issues in the local community. But better than that, it helps to engage, enable and empower people inside and outside of your organisations to work together in the pursuit of social, economic and environmental well-being. Social value helps with stakeholder engagement, employee engagement and retention, improves mental health and well-being, helps build a diverse and inclusive workforce, attract talent, can improve your brand reputation and change the lives of the community around you. So let's get started. We're going to start with some introductions from our panel, and I'd like to welcome Mark, our partner for this webinar. Do you want to start with an introduction, Mark?
Thanks, Sam. And firstly, could I thank you for hosting this? And secondly, for everyone who's joined the webinar, and especially also to our panelists here. So really appreciate you being part of this. So my name is Mark Shearer. I'm co-founder and CEO of Action Funder. And the best way to describe us, we're a dating site that matches company grants to community projects. We launched about a year ago. We put about almost £900,000 worth of grants through the system in the first 13 months, and we're working with some amazing companies. So we're delighted to be here, and I'll hand back to you, Sam.
Yeah, Linda, over to you. Let's have an introduction from you.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. I'm Linda Thwaite, and I'm the Director for Brand Communications and Impact at Sir Robert McAlpine. Sir Robert McAlpine are a construction company. We're over 150 years old, and we're lucky enough to work on Britain's most iconic projects. You may have seen the scaffolding around Big Ben. That was us. It's now down and looks beautiful. So I'm really excited to talk about how social value matters to us today.
And Guy, over to you if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Guy Battle. I'm the Chief Executive of Social Value Portal, and we have an online platform that helps organisations measure, manage and maximise social value. And we've developed a social management framework that I'll talk about later called the National TOMS.
And last but not least, Maureen.
Hello, I'm Maureen, and I am Director and Coordinator at Oxford Mutual Aid, a grassroots group that's set up in response to COVID-19, now tackling food poverty and food justice, and we support around 2,000 people a week. I also do some coordination work with the OX4 Food Crew, which is a partnership of 9 local organisations. It's an example of a community wealth building initiative, and we work to ensure that everybody is fed, well nourished and can thrive.
Brilliant. Social value can mean different things to different people. I'd like to go around the panel and ask what it means to you and how it fits into your role. Linda, I want to start with you. At Sir Robert McAlpine, you place a premium on social value. Why is that, and what does it mean to you?
Hi, Sam. Thanks. What does it mean to me and what does it mean to the company, I guess, are more closely aligned than they ever used to be. And I think that'll probably be a running theme for today. So social value for us is really the impact that we have where we work, the positive impact that we have. So, for example, we can pop up in any city or town and end up building a stadium or a huge office, or mixed use retail space. And we can't just turn up and build that and then leave. We're there for a long period of time, sometimes years, and it's really important that we become part of the community when we're there. And social value and understanding what matters to the people where we're working and the people who are working on our projects is what drives the decisions we make about social value. But if I was, I guess, to put it really simply to anybody who didn't want all the management speak and didn't work in this, it's about doing the right thing and doing good and doing something that matters to leave a good, positive, lasting legacy.
Brilliant. With Guy, social value is great, but even better when it's measured. How do you do that? And also, what does social value mean to you?
So I'll deal with the first bit first, because the measurement it might take a bit longer, but I'm happy to answer that after everyone's done their definitions. But we always fall back on the Social Value Act. I think what Linda has said is puts it in sort of a broad conceptual sort of like objective, if you like, making good, go further, doing the right thing, all those things. Because we're focused on measurement, we sort of fall back on the Social Value Act, or the Public Services Social Value Act, that was published or passed by Parliament in 2012 and then implemented 2013. And what's important about the Act is that it's a triple bottom line sort of piece of legislation. What I mean by that, it defines social value as the social, economic and environmental well-being of communities. And I think it's really important to remember that it's about those three things, not just about one thing. So it's not just about creating jobs or supporting community groups, which plainly is important. It's also about regenerating our environment, sort of going that extra mile to reduce carbon emissions, but it's also about thinking how an organization can contribute to the local community. And I think that outside of the Act, what it means to me is that a business understands, and when it's about business, it's business or public sector, so an organization understands the agency that it has in a place, and it thinks carefully about not only how it can make money, because that's important, stay afloat, but also what responsibility, what can that organisation do within that community to support that community, or indeed the communities where they work. In Linda's case, SRM will work in many places. So that's kind of the broad definition to me. I'll come back to measurement probably after this, after everyone's gone around to definitions, because it's a bit longer.
Absolutely. Maureen, with you in your charity, you couldn't survive without companies supporting you. Tell us more about what it means from your side, and of course how you've been affected over the last few years.
So, I mean, we've obviously, Oxford Mutual Aid has only been going for 2.5 years. So this has been a real moment of crisis and really devastating for people, but it also represented an opportunity, particularly around like newer, innovative ways of working and how we support one another. And I think that what we've seen over the last 2.5 years is that because of I guess, the crisis that we were in, and like the opportunities that were presented that wouldn't have been presented before. So like barriers were broken down between different segments of society and the ways in which we can support one another. And that represented something really meaningful. And like, in a way, this kind of like renewed focus on social value, it does like represent an opportunity not just to improve like outcomes in the short term, but over the longer term. So you're building connections, because supporting like a local organization like Oxford Mutual Aid, yes, it's about money and we do need money, and that's really important, but like there's really important ways that we actually work together, like skills exchange, knowledge exchange, and maybe those opportunities weren't necessarily there before, like around law or like database building, or even like assets. Like it absolutely changed our world when we got like leased a van from Ford. So I think that it really does, it represents an opportunity, and it has been really, really meaningful for us in like so many ways.
That's good to hear, and I know how difficult it's been, and what a difference your charity has made to your community. Mark, what about you? Anything to add? What social value means to you?
Sam, I agree with what the panelists have said, and I think for me it's about additionality. It's about creating more of what we've got, which is very much looking at that value piece. And I'm really glad that the value has the word value in it, because from a company's perspective, it is about creating that value with the people that work for you, with the communities that you that you engage with. So I'd add to what everyone says, it's looking at that value point, it's about the additionality and making things better. And that creates more value for the business, not just monetary value, but also it becomes a better business from delivering on social value aims.
Thank you. Just to point out, if anyone has any questions while we're chatting away, then please pop your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. But I might not be able to keep up with the chat and I might miss the questions, and I don't want to, but and we'll try and get to them later on in the conversation. But Linda, from your point of view, from a business, why is it so important to have social value?
Well, there's loads of reasons. There's legislation, as you know, guys already said, and I kind of almost want to say that because it's really important, but then put it to one side. There's legislative requirements around social value with some of our construction contracts with our clients, and we obviously we want to fulfill those. But more important, it's about our values. We're a family business, and we want to live our values. They're not just, you know, 5 words that we put up on a wall, on a poster. They actually really matter to how we behave and what we do. So it matters to us because living those values means that we can show to our employees that we are who we say we are. You know, you can trust us. You're working somewhere that you can have absolute pride in. And if your values match ours, then you're in the absolute right place. That then transfers over into the relationships that we have with our clients. You know, that they want to work with people that they can trust. They want to work with people that are principled, ethical, and live by their values. And so having strong social value purpose and activities related to that, and as Guy, I'm sure will tell you, measurement that we can then evidence, means that we can show that we really are who we say we are, and we fulfill our promises. And I think that's very easy for businesses to say, but if I'm completely honest, I don't think it's always very easy for businesses to do. It can be quite hard to get this right, and that's why it's really important when tools or opportunities come on the market, things like Action Funder that kind of change the game for us, that businesses have to have the foresight to grab those and use them.
And have you seen the difference by, you know, the work that you've done? Do you see that in the employees, in the communities that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it splits into head and to heart, isn't it? But for us, you know, social value it helps us win work because we're able to evidence what we've done and put it in bids and tenders, and the potential clients can see that and they can get a real sense of who we are and decide whether or not they want to work with us based on that. So from a really commercial sense, it helps us win work. It also has helped us win talent. You know, people want to come and work for us and they want to stay working with us because of the good stuff that we do beyond the building. You know, our buildings are great, and you know, I never thought I'd think that construction was as fascinating as it is, but it is. By the way, it's utterly fascinating once you're in it, but it's beyond the building. It's the impact that you leave, and you know, we did a massive construction project in the middle of London, Broadgate, and the community engagement on that project and the fund that was set up to help was phenomenal. And it just meant that, you know, we're not just a disruptive construction company who make a lot of noise in a building. Actually, people could track exactly what could happen. They could see how much money was going back. They could see how many apprentices were on the project. Local schools were able to visit and were engaged. So all of that kind of collects to make it a really savvy business decision for winning work, for attracting people, for keeping them, and for, you know, from my perspective, I run brand, so it helps us position our brand exactly as we want to, you know, as someone you could trust, as someone who does what they say they're going to do, and as someone who lives by their values.
That's so right. Guy, for how do you think that social value fits into today's world?
Fully and squarely. I mean, I just reflect. It's been quite interesting, sort of just watching the journey of social value, and how it has escalated or grown from a term that people didn't quite understand, 2014, 2015 to where it is now. And it's to the point where people are saying, well, is social value more important than sustainability? And is social value more important than ESG? And I think if we go back to the sort of birthplace of sustainability or sustainable development, which is kind of 1989 with the Brundtland report, it took years and years to get sustainability into board level. 20 years. I mean, really, I've been on that journey properly since 93, and we were bashing our heads against a brick wall, and people just didn't take the term or the ambition seriously. But we're in a different time now, and social value has just escalated. And I think one of the tipping points, strangely enough, has been COVID, because it's reminded us that community is probably the single most important thing that we have around us. And so everyone then said, okay, how do we build community? How do we support community? And social value encompasses that, because it's social, economic, and environmental. It's about people, place, and planets, all those things wrapped into one. And so for me, it's fundamental to how a business thinks about itself. And importantly, just picking up on what Mark said about additionality. So, it's really important you get on with the normal business, right? So, Shearer, but McAlpine got to build buildings, and Maureen, you've got to deliver what you're doing, and Mark, you're doing. But actually, what's the additional value you're going to create for society? What's your purpose? But why do you exist other than just making money? And making money on its own, whilst in some places, for some people, it's enough. I think that has shifted. I think it's certainly shifted in Europe and in the UK. It's still got a bit of a way to go, when we move across to America. But I think the definition of shareholder value has changed. And within that, social value has shifted. And so we need to ask ourselves, and businesses need to embrace it. And that's why it's so important. It's about that social license to operate. And it's about giving the business a sense of purpose above and beyond just its core sort of output.
Yeah, I totally agree. Mark, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think for me as well, what's important is we've come into an age whereby delivering on your social value aims creates monetary value as well for your business, as Linda went through all the different reasons why, and we're seeing this a lot. And I really love the fact we now have a value exchange, whereby by engaging and supporting communities, you can create stronger and better businesses with more monetary value as well as social value. So there's a bit of a flywheel going on. And I think one thing that we've always tried to do here at Action Funder is not only provide a really practical tool to enable this kind of matchmaking to happen and this connection to happen, but also to enable not only the communities to get the money they need to achieve their goals right at the grassroots, because they know what they need, but to have the tools so that the businesses can also demonstrate what they're doing and increase not only their social value, but also their business value, and use that as a competitive advantage. And I think this is what we're starting to see really grow, not just here in the UK, but across the world. And I think that for me is that value exchange is really important.
Absolutely. Linda, do you need to have a social value strategy? I mean, you've done a lot of work on this. Does it help?
Yeah, I guess you don't need to, but I would suggest you get one if you haven't got one, because it stops the chaos. And I think that what we found was we had multiple strands of great intentions and activity. So loads of good stuff going on, and nobody wants somebody to come in and create a strategy and to stop that good stuff going on. So you've got to create the right social value purpose or strategy for you and your business, no matter how big or small. We've got around 2,000 staff, and then beyond with the supply chain. So we're a fairly big business, and we had lots of people organising community impact on an individual level. So lots of small fundraising going on. We had some big corporate partnerships, and then we had this kind of gap in the middle of people wanting to do good, but not knowing quite what they could and couldn't do or how to go about it. And then a significant lack of resource as well. So I think unless people are in a very lucky position, this tends not to be resourced in businesses. So nobody really knows where to go to ask a question to say, we want to do good in Oxford. Let's use you, Maria. And we're going to be working there for 2 years. We want to do good. There's loads of charities on. We've Googled it. There's loads of charities. We don't really know what to do. That from a business perspective is very difficult to manage. Whereas if you've got a strategy that says, well, these are our criteria, or these are the things that matter to us. So this helps to narrow it down. Once more, that strategy and purpose helps you to have increased direction, I guess. And then something like Action Funder, or whatever you use, would then enable you to say, right, well, we've got these priorities, these criteria, we know what matters to our stakeholders, so whoever that may be, our staff, the community, or our clients. Now we need to find charitable organizations that we can help, that also we know are that the due diligence is done on. I think that's the bit that was really tricky for us as a business before we had any sort of strategy or support in this area. We didn't know if who we were talking to we could help, and we couldn't get through to the right people. And I'm sure Marianne would back this point up, couldn't get through to us. There's no way they could get through to anyone or the right person at Sir Robert McAlpine to try and access that funding. So having a strategy in place that helped us define criteria was really, really important. It gave everyone some direction, and then having tools below that to enable us to deliver against it for the last couple of years has just changed how we've done things massively.
Brilliant. And must have saved so much time as well.
I think, yes, and it's just, I'm sure there are far more eloquent ways to say it, but just it saved so much faff. Like there was a load of faff, there was loads of us, we all wanted to do good, but nobody knew who was in charge of it, nobody knew how to, it was all a bit faffy, and then actually it wasn't measured. We had all this great stuff going on, but we didn't have the evidence to back it up, to maybe even tell people about it, which is great that people are humble and want to do good stuff, but from a commercial angle, I would love to tell that story. And so we need strategy, and we need direction, and we need tools to help us get to that point, to just make it a little more slick, I think.
And Maureen, I see you nodding your head there. From a charity point of view, it must help you massively.
Immensely. So people who are working on the ground locally are working on the ground and focused on the very real crises in front of them, like every day. We're on the front line, and we see it, and we have to be focused on that. But kind of gaining access to corporations or people who want to do good, we're not always going to have the time to do that. And what we've learned over the last 2 years over COVID is that local people know how to support one another, that solutions at the grassroots levels are really, really meaningful, but they don't often have access to bigger funds or the knowledge and the expertise and how to get access to them. But they have so much knowledge and expertise, like about what's going on the ground, what solutions work locally. We've just seen that the voluntary sector over the last 2.5 years has been amazing. And without kind of access to continued funds, when we're coming into, like, nothing's over, we are in a massive cost of living crisis, climate emergency. We have to have solutions whereby we're creating these access points to make meaningful kind of like redistribution of wealth and resources and skills and knowledge, because we do have those crises facing us, and we have to address them, and we can't do that without working together. And that's what you're doing. You're creating the access points for resources, but also communication, and maybe like thinking about it in an innovative way about how we communicate with each other, and not being like a one-sided relationship. Oh, the money is coming this way, so the power is that way, but actually having a reciprocal relationship and acknowledging the real value in local grassroots solutions, and what even corporations can learn from them, and like the innovative things we do, and learning about your local community, and engaging with one another. And what we're doing is breaking down barriers, and it's just so important, and it's only going to get harder for the, you know, this is a very positive conversation, but I see it every day. Things are really, really bad at the moment. We're facing massive food supply shortages, more and more people needing support. So this is more needed than ever. And I just hope that more people kind of engage with it. And I think that what Linda was saying about the importance of like strategy and thinking how you do it. And I would encourage people to really try and look at it as a reciprocal relationship and have a bit of flexibility around it as well, and be like, look at it as an exciting opportunity about learning about different ways of working and getting rid of the faffiness and saying like, we're focused on doing good. We want to make this change. How can we do it together? And it does definitely represent an opportunity. And I think, so I won't go on too much more, but platforms like that are just really important, because otherwise grassroots people can't get access to them. And they're the ones who are doing it on the ground, you know?
Yeah, I think what you say about that partnership going both ways, you know, you feel really good when you're doing good and you can see that. But sometimes people make mistakes. I've heard some stories about some organisations that were going to build a children's park outside an old people's home, and then once they actually had the conversation with them, that they didn't want it. But Mark, can you share some common mistakes that people make with social value?
Yes, so I think for me, we hear the acronym ED&I a lot, equality, diversity and inclusion. And what we've seen quite a bit is that foundations and companies traditionally have not known how to access communities. And so they'll give or offer quite large sums of money, but packaged up in certain ways that make it quite difficult to access. So, you know, we were talking to a foundation recently and they said, well, we're not reaching the kind of communities that we want to. And you look at the application procedure, and it was just, there was pages and pages, and you had to be a registered charity, and that incorporation takes months. And how many people from communities are often overlooked are going to have the means and the resource and so on to go through that kind of system? They just want to get on and they want to create an impact locally. So I think one of the things that we've really seen is that through Action Funder, we've not only kind of created that visibility and that matching mechanism, but we've also, it's that accessibility. And I think there's a kind of, and I'm really proud on this, and we've had a number of companies and foundations say, wow, the non-profits can set up their projects, and it's very straightforward, it's very visible, it's very powerful, but it enables people from all communities to do that, or charities and non-profits from all communities to do that. And I think, so one of the mistakes is kind of lumping big funds through a very formal process, and we're trying to break that down so that it's very much about on the ground and a very slick, straightforward, transparent application process. I think the other thing is that some companies haven't realised the huge value associated with this. I mean, Linda went through it earlier, whether it's, you know, you're winning the war on talent, whether it's better tenders, whether it's stakeholder management, etc., and community engagement. So more and more we're going to see this. So I think, and I think the last thing is sometimes companies get a little bit scared that it's not their core business and they don't know quite how to do it. And so they end up kind of dipping their toe in the water. And more we're seeing companies like McAlpines show leadership in this area. And especially, I'm going to bring in Social Value Portal here. It's really helpful having frameworks like the Social Value Portal, because they can demonstrate the impact they've created as well. So it's a much more interesting place, and there are many more ways to actually engage properly rather than the kind of the check to the big charity that used to happen a few years ago.
Sam, sorry can I just, I know that you've probably got a format, but just I wanted to comment on Mark's point, because one of the things we found had real value to us was exactly that application process. So some of the funds that we have given, you know, a small funds of £3,000 to, like for a couple of guys going around doing haircuts for homeless, for example, there is no way they want to be filling in huge forms, accessing grants from massive funds, you know, and setting up themselves. But what was easy for them to do was we got loads of videos as applications for funds, which we actually found really amazing from an employee engagement perspective, because we were able to watch these, the videos from the charities or the community groups asking for money and what it was going to be used for. So we got a real sense of the people behind the projects, which sometimes in this sort of environment, it's all very paper driven, and for something so emotional, it's really hard to get a grip of things. So to have the application process really easy for the community groups, I think is a real gift back to those community groups. But also from our perspective, from an employee engagement perspective, watching those videos was really emotional, and it was quite a tough but also a really enjoyable process, because we really felt we'd done something good once we'd watched them and we were able to award them money. That to me feels like a very different way of doing this and doing business, rather than it being transactional. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just
No. We want the conversation to flow, and I think that storytelling, it really does make such a difference. When you go to a charity event and there's somebody that's telling that story, and it really makes you think about why you're there and what you're doing. But Mark, you mentioned about measuring social value. I think it's really important to bring you in, Guy, at this point and talk about that measurement. How do you measure it? How do you put a price on social value? You're on mute, Guy.
That is very smart, isn't it? So I'll chat about that and answer one of the questions in the Q&A, which is about the difference between ESG, CSR, and property social value. So measurement, why is it important to measure and put a value to it? Well, I mean, if you measure, then you can manage, and what you manage, then you can do better at. And I think that's really important. And I think stories are really, really important. Touching people's lives are really, really important. But that was kind of the trap that CSR got into. CSR got into that trap of, this massive organization having one or two people doing a CSR strategy and making the stories big and splashing all PR and all that sort of stuff and pretending that was good enough. Well, it ain't. I mean, just to be slightly controversial, let's, for God's sakes, put CSR in the bin. I just think we've got to move on from CSR. It is about social value. CSR is a subset of social value, if you like, because what you're asking yourself as a business is what additional value you're going to deliver for society. And you might have, a charity program that fits within that, which is great, but you might be, as an organization, also employing, young offenders, or mothers who have been long-term unemployed because they've had kids coming back into the workforce. Those are really important. And to prove that, you need to measure. And then once you're measuring it, you need to provide evidence. Because the other thing we've got to be wary of is this sort of I use the word greenwash because everyone's heard of the term greenwash. What we don't want to do is fall into that trap of all the stories that are great, actually hiding the fact that a business actually isn't doing very much at all. It hasn't changed its business processes. Social value is effectively a change management solution. You are changing how you think about how you're doing business, not what you're building. That stays the same, on budget, on time, all that sort of stuff. But how are you building it? How are you reducing the carbon footprint in the building? How are you employing people? All these things in the how is really important. And so just to jump to the question that someone asked in the QA, what's the difference between CSR, ESG, and social value? So CSR, I think, is a subset of social value, and we can kind of drop the term in all honesty. It's old hat. ESG is a risk management sort of framework, and its birthplace is with analysts, investor analysts who say, is my investment got a risk around the environmental, the social element, and then how do you wrap around governance around that? So it's about risk minimization, whereas social values, the other side of that equation, if you like, is the value add. So social value is about how much value am I adding to my business by working with marine, for instance. I mean, that I think is important. So we've got those two elements that are really important. Both of those terms sit under the term sustainability. And so I think that just in context is really important. And then the social value bit, you could argue, is the S in ESG, but again, it's how do you express the S? How do you express the contribution that you make to society? And so we've developed a measurement framework that's been endorsed by local government associations, used by the vast majority of councils here in the UK, and it's also now being used by many contractors in the planning process as well. And it breaks that social value into 5 principal themes, which is jobs, which is local support for regional businesses, which is supporting communities, protecting our environment, and then innovation. And what we then do is got a series of outcomes and measures, hence the word TOMS, themes, outcomes, and measures. And then importantly, put a value to that. So we help organizations understand what's the scale of our contribution by putting a pound sign to it. Not that the number is, you know, any more important than the story that's sitting behind it, but it helps organizations understand that actually it's not a small blip on the pimple of, you know, the business. Actually, it's a major thing. So if you look at something, we've done some work with Legal and General and SRM up in Newcastle, and you know, the social value add is, I think, 25 or 30% of the construction cost. I mean, it's like, that is big, right? It's not a small thing, it's massive. And that's why the number's important, because then we want to know about the stories. But the evidence within the measurement framework, I think, is fundamental to ensuring that, and that's why, you know, we're linking up with Mark and embedding the TOMS into some of the projects that he's going to be doing, because again, is that evidence base that's so important to prove that you are actually delivering on your promises.
There's another question that I want to pick up here, and that is, you know, you mentioned about ESG, and sometimes I feel that the term ESG, people understand that as a sustainability and social responsibility strategy, but someone asked a question that recent an S&P global paper noted that we see plenty of E, but we don't see so much of the S in ESG. How do we fix that? Well,
by working with us, right? We're the S. We're the S in Fordy's terms. We're the society. What's the contribution a business makes to society, which is what the S is asking, and we've broken down with those 5 themes. We pick up a little bit of the environment, but not a big bit. So we pick up the added value when it comes to environment, like the carbon savings or the amount of waste you divert from landfill. We put a value on that. But the S is what we're all about. And the reason why it hasn't happened is that, you know, there hasn't been a framework around to allow you to measure the S for a long time. You know, I mean, forever really, until we've created it. The E, we've been on that journey, measuring tons of carbon, you know, meter cubed of water, species in terms of biodiversity. The S is, and that's where we need to now move to.
Yeah. You need to get S on your boards and in your exec rooms as well, unapologetically ask to get it there. I think so. The people who are on this call, you've got some sort of vested interest in the S by being here. And I think that not many businesses have this topic at a conversation at the highest level yet, even though it's fundamental to the success of a business. It's somehow still tagged on sometimes and seen as, oh, and we must do that. You know, even though the benefits are massive, it has to be moved to be an integral part of your business leadership and strategy. And that involves somebody in the business saying, this needs to be in the room, and champion until you get it there. And I say that as somebody who has been doing that, because it's really important. So I guess it's a bit of a inciting of a revolution on the call to make sure that everybody who cares about it starts relentlessly mentioning it until they get the S to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think, like, I just want to go over those benefits again, because actually, you know, you look at the attrition rates and how difficult it is to attract people to businesses these days, because, you know, people want to work for a company that's doing good, and they're not going to keep their people if they're not doing that right. But do you want to just go over again, Linda? I know you mentioned them in the chat before, but really sort of go through those benefits and what it does.
So for us, there are benefits at every level of stakeholder, really. So if we start with, we're a construction company, we aim to build beautiful, wonderful things, leave a lasting positive legacy, but also make money. We're a business. So for us, having clear social value aims, purpose, goals, impact that we can measure helps us to put those figures and that data and those stories in our bids and tenders that help us to win work. Yeah, so that's what step one benefit. Step two is employee engagement. It's really hard to engage a full workforce in a really meaningful way. Everybody's different, but everybody has something they care about. So social value enables us to set up projects, community projects, whether they're charitable or whether it's apprenticeships coming in, or whether it's like Guy mentioned, schemes for we work with an organisation called Key for Life, who helps to re-employ offenders. Everybody has something that matters to them. And if you're clever about your social value, then you can find out what matters to your people and try and make sure that you've got a good spread of good projects that mean that they can hook on to something, and that boosts your employee engagement. I think the workforce, the skills crisis at the moment, it's fascinating. When I'm interviewing people for jobs at the moment, and I'm seeing them come into the business, it's really different to 10, 15 years ago. These people they're picking us. They're picking whether we suit what they want from their life. And so making sure that we can evidence that we live our values, that we do what we say we're going to do, and then show them the impact that we've had on different communities or by different community groups, helps people choose to come and work with us or choose to stay with us. So for us, that's really important. And then I guess the last one is brand. It's, everybody wants to work for someone they can be proud of. And can you be proud of working for a company that you don't see being responsible, whether it's environmentally, whether it's socially, whether it's, in their terms and benefits with you, or how they treat people? You can't have real pride in a company that doesn't do that unless you're completely unscrupulous. So true social value helps us position the brand as well.
Does anyone else have anything to add? Benefits? Mark, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we've seen is, I think it's, firstly, Sam, it's been a really interesting journey for us. We've launched a new product in this kind of emerging marketplace. And, we did that to be a solution to a problem, i.e. trying to deliver on this tricky S pillar of ESG. And what we've seen a lot of is that employee engagement part, And so typically, yes, the impact is external. And I think, given the platform we built, but it's the employees who are the ones who are nominating projects. They're the ones who are sitting on the judging panels. They're the ones who are really getting involved. So it's kind of devolving some of the decision making from where it has been in the past. And I think, so that's great. And the other thing is that you can imagine I'm kind of been pitching, kind of 5-10 times a week to different companies and speaking to people. Often it's the C-suite, the board members who worry about this stuff and don't get round to it. So we're finding it's really, there has been a momentum shift at that high level. And so it's about now creating very practical opportunities and tools to demonstrate, right, this is how you can do this stuff. And this is how you can generate value for your business. So it's a really interesting space, but that employee engagement has been fascinating, actually.
And I guess for businesses, the Social Value Act, it's important. Guy, do you want to, I don't think everybody really knows or understands about the Social Value Act and what it is. Guy, could you give us a little explanation about that?
Okay, yeah, very high level. Published in 2012, implemented 2013, and the language back then was that it required all public sector buying authorities to consider social value, defined as social, economic, and environmental well-being, within their procurement decision-making. And that has been recently reinforced by various other guidance notes, including things like PPN 0620, and I'll put these into the chat. These are procurement policy notes, and now it's a requirement for public sector to account for social value, and there is a minimum 10% weighting. And what that means is that if you are bidding for work with central government, let's say it's a building contract, then the price might be 40%, or 50%. The quality or meeting the technical brief might be 40%, leaving a 10% on social value. 10% is the lowest, and we're seeing places like Manchester that are doing 20% as a minimum, and even as high as 30%. So what that tells you, and to just reinforcing what Linda said about having a policy, if you don't have a social value policy when you're bidding for the public sector, there will come a time, and you could argue it's even now, that you just won't win work for the public sector. It's not going to be possible, because at a 20% weighting of social value, that means you have to have a significantly lower price in there, or your quality has to be right at the very top. And given that pricing and quality quite often is kind of similar, we see, and we do a lot of evaluations. We're involved in about 100 procurements every month, where we're actually part of the evaluation process. It's kind of working with councils, and social value so often is the reason why one business wins that contract above another contract. And so the direction is only going on one way. And just one other thing, there's something called the Procurement Bill, announced in the Queen's speech just a few months ago, and that procurement bill will embed social value and the principles of social value into the new procurement guidelines, which will be published in the new year. So it's kind of here to stay, and it's just so that's basically the legislation of it.
Thank you. Very clear explanation there. I'm going to ask a couple of the questions from the chat here. Got a question from Gemma. What would your top tips be for starting conversations with stakeholders regarding introducing a social strategy? Would anyone like to answer that? Linda, probably.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Remember that everybody is human. Everybody has something that matters to them. Yeah. Find what you know matters to your business and what you know matters to that individual. Put them together and go and have that conversation. So we know we need to win more work. I know you're really passionate about your team being engaged. We could do this better if we get our social value better. Find out what that sweet spot is and just be relentless. This is a no-brainer conversation, so there should be no doubt in your mind walking into these conversations. It matters now, and it matters to the future business. And if people aren't getting on board with that, then they're missing a point, actually. So you just need to be really bold and really relentless until they catch up with what is essential. And it's an already great start that you're one step ahead of them.
Mark, you want to answer as well?
Yeah, just very quickly. So they say timing is everything. And I think we're at a really interesting time in kind of the evolution of businesses, why they exist and how they can maximize the value. I think also with the way that communities collaborate, what Maureen's doing in Oxford is one of thousands of tens of thousands of non-profits, charities, etc. I mean, we've got about 3,000 projects on Action Funder at the moment, for example. So it's a really, really interesting time. And I suppose what I would say is that this is absolutely the time where if companies show leadership in this field, they will reap the rewards. And I think it's the perfect time for the employees to go nag the CEOs and so on, and to say, look, let's get on with this, because you should be, as Linda said, pushing an open door. And then it's up to the likes of ourselves, an Action Funder, to provide the tools to enable you to do that, and Social Value Portal will be able to capture the impact of the value of what you've created. But it is about being a bit pushy, but now's the time for leadership. So don't be afraid, go for it. Guy.
I'll just add, and I just emphasize, I thought, Linda, you put it really well, actually. It's really I can tell you're a people person, right? Which is, find the business case, and then find the thing that the interest in the individual that drives them. For me, it's that business case is really, really important. And plainly, for someone like SRM, where you're bidding for public sector work, just winning work. I just mentioned about the Act. I mean, if you don't have a social value solution, then you're not going to win the work, right? Because you're up against Waits, you're up against Balfour's, and all of these guys have really good social value offers. And so you've got to do it to win the work, which I think is really important. The challenge comes, and we're facing it now, is working and persuading those businesses that are not working with the public sector to do it. And that is the kind of the business that's the vast majority of SMEs and many FTSE 100s. Not everyone works in the public sector. And I think we ought to, what we now need to, the Act is kind of doing its thing. We need to now think, how do we ensure those businesses outside of the influence of public sector procurement, how do we persuade them to get on board with social value? And I think a few things have been mentioned around, retaining people, retaining talent. I think there's something around customer retention as well, about purpose. There's that everything around reputation. And I think there's always a business case within that, whether you're bidding for work or not. So I think it's really important we say, how do we go beyond public sector suppliers into the wider world of business?
Thank you. Maureen, for you, sorry, did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
Well, it was a little bit earlier about, obviously I'm coming from my perspective from the director of an organization where employees would volunteer or get engaged through the kind of funding that the business that they're employed by. And that's their kind of entry to us. And we have seen like people are really engaged and they might come in for a volunteer evening or a volunteer day. But then they come back and they get involved in the because we try to maintain as flat structure as possible. So we have lots of general meetings, have consent-based decisions and stuff, but then they're involved in kind of learning about the community, getting involved in meetings and really supporting the work that we do. And then also that goes back then to the business. And then the business is actually, we see some really positive things happening here and want to continue to engage. So I think it's, and I think people do get a lot out of it. And also you create a space where people who might have never met before are meeting and learning about one another. And that's what you want to be doing, is breaking down those barriers in communities and caring, creating communities of care, that we care about one another. I think that's something that has really come through in what Linda has said, that people do care. You have to find the kind of ways to create opportunities for it, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. We're nearly at the end. We've got about 5 more minutes, and I just want to go round. I think we could have talked about this for another hour, I really do. But I'd like to go round the panelists and ask if you had one piece of advice that you'd give to an organisation or to a charity that needs help with a social value strategy. What would it be? Guy, should we start with you?
So get one, right? Just get a strategy sorted out and a policy. But I think recognize that a social value strategy is much more than a CSR strategy, and it's never going to work unless the whole of the business embraces it as a kind of change management sort of transformational process. Because what you're doing with social value, again, it's not about the what, it's about how you are delivering your core business. So it's about the how, and that is a change management process. So whilst you can get the business case building, but the more stakeholders in a business that you get engaged with it, recognizing this is about just being a better business, the more likely it's going to stay and the more value you will deliver for society.
Thank you. Linda, shall we move to you next?
I guess a couple of things. One thing is to echo what Mark said, it's okay to start small. It can feel a bit overwhelming, especially, so it's okay to start small, just start doing some good stuff and it will evolve. It's taken us a couple of years to get to this phase and we've still got years to go until we are up and running and flying at this. So it's okay to start small. I've got 2 more bits. One is be relentless if it matters to you in your heart. If you can figure out that that matters to you headwise for your business, go for it. Those two are aligned and you should run at it relentlessly. Don't give up. And the third is to talk to charities like Oxford Mutual through Marianne, and people, you know, have some human interaction with these groups, and that's your case made for you. I guarantee you will be given the energy and vim to drive this forward once you have those conversations.
Thank you. Maureen?
Echoing what Linda said, like human engagement, talking to each other is like so important, and just, you know, meeting each other on that level. I think it's really important also to always keep in mind your objectives and your principles from our perspective, and like that we're always reflecting the people we seek to serve. And so that might mean having a little bit longer conversations with corporations or whatever about like why we do things the way we do, and acknowledging that we can both learn from each other in a reciprocal way. Money is awesome. You know, giving money is great, and like the impact a small amount can have on a grassroots group can be transformative. You might necessarily realize that, but there are other things as well, like knowledge, skills, experience, mentorship. It's about, you can do those innovative things. It's just having the conversations first with people. I think the communication is really key. Brilliant.
And Mark, let's finish with you.
Well, Sam, I'm very biased. I'd say just use Action Funder.
I'd agree.
But you know, we've had amazing support from Linda and Guy and other companies. I mean, we're doing a fantastic campaign with Green King at the moment that has engaged thousands of their customers nominating local projects they want Green King to support. So for me, I always have this phrase in my mind, you know, who dares wins. And I think that in this space, I'd say, yes, we sometimes I meet with people and they say, well, we need to get everything ready before we start. And it's like, oh, you know, you could put, so when during the pandemic and before we built the platform, we surveyed all of our community groups, and it came back saying, we need knowledge, we need volunteering and so on, but actually the key thing we need is funding, because we know how to spend it and where to put it. So I would say, I would kind of twin track it, and I'd say start small. If you want to support your local community and engage your employees and customers and so on, funding is a great way to do it. Make it fun, make it engaging. I think we've moved beyond this whole kind of the world is doomed and this guilt trip scenario, where actually now ESG has very much moved that on, and social value. So I really embrace that. And just small steps and get going. And if you want to work with us on Action Funder, great. But I'd also really, and then you can twin track that with the strategy, and you can learn as you go along. I mean, when we built the platform, we didn't complete the platform. We built the first bits of it because we wanted to know how people were going to use it. And we're now evolving. And I think a social value strategy can be the same. Just get going, learn from that, put the right building blocks in place, and then you can expand it and show real leadership and enjoy it.
Brilliant.
Thanks for having me.
Can I echo the plug for Action Funder? Sorry, but like, go on it. There's some really interesting, amazing projects on there, whether you're, you know, an organization, charity, or a corporation. It's an access point and it's an opportunity. So.
Brilliant. I just want to finish off saying thank you to all of our panelists. This has been such a great, insightful, helpful conversation. Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Linda. And a special thanks to our partner for this webinar, Mark, Action Funder. It's honestly, it's a great platform. Our next webinar, Why Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Matters, is on the 8th of September. We'll be sending out details on that. But thank you all, have a good day, and we really appreciate you being here and joining us for the whole hour. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.